The Life and Purpose of Samson, a story of strength, redemption, and divine purpose. Let us begin. In the land of Israel, long before the reign of kings, the people of God lived under the rule of judges. It was a time of chaos, rebellion, and deliverance. The Israelites, time and again, turned away from God, and each time, He raised up a deliverer to rescue them from their enemies. Among these judges was a man unlike any other, Samson, the strongest man to ever walk the earth. But Samson's story is not just about his strength. It is a tale of divine calling, human weakness, and ultimate redemption. Before Samson was even born, his destiny was set. The angel of the Lord appeared to a barren woman, the wife of Manoah, and gave a prophecy. She would bear a son, and this child would begin to deliver Israel from the oppression of the Philistines. But there was a condition. This child would be set apart as a Nazirite from birth. He was to drink no wine, touch no dead body, and most importantly, no razor was to touch his head. His hair would be a sign of his consecration to God. And so, in due time, Samson was born, a child of divine promise. As Samson grew, so did his strength. The Spirit of the Lord would come upon him, and he would perform feats of unimaginable power. He tore a lion apart with his bare hands. He struck down 1,000 Philistine soldiers with nothing but the jawbone of a donkey. He carried the gates of a city on his shoulders and walked away with them. But with all his strength, Samson had a weakness, his own desires. He was a man driven by impulse, often choosing passion over purpose. He fell in love with Philistine women, disregarding the commands of God. And his greatest downfall came in the form of Delilah, a woman who was offered silver to uncover the secret of his strength. Delilah pressed him day after day, and in his weakness, Samson gave in. He revealed that his strength lay in his uncut hair. As he slept, she had his hair shaved, and when he awoke, the power of the Lord had left him. The mighty warrior who once struck fear into the Philistines was now captured, blinded, and humiliated. They bound him in chains, gouged out his eyes, and forced him to grind grain like an ox. But in the darkness of his prison, Samson found something greater than his strength. He found humility and a heart that turned back to God. Samson's hair began to grow again, and so did his faith. One day, the Philistines held a great feast in the temple of their god, Dagon, to celebrate their victory over Samson. They brought him out to mock him, unaware that his strength was returning. With his hands placed on the pillars of the temple, Samson prayed one last prayer. Lord God, remember me, I pray. Strengthen me just this once, O God, that I may take vengeance on the Philistines for my 2 eyes. With one mighty push, he brought the entire temple crashing down, killing himself and thousands of Philistines. Samson died a broken man, but in his final moments, he fulfilled his divine purpose. He began the deliverance of Israel from the Philistines. Samson's life, though filled with failure and redemption, foreshadows the greatest deliverer, Jesus Christ. Like Samson, Jesus was born with a divine purpose, foretold by an angel. But where Samson failed, Christ prevailed. Samson was tempted and fell, but Jesus overcame temptation. Samson's death brought destruction to his enemies, but Jesus' death brought salvation to the world. Samson's story reminds us that even in our failures, God's purpose can still be fulfilled. And just as Samson stretched out his arms to bring down the temple, Jesus stretched out his arms on the cross to bring redemption to all who believe in him. 1. God's calling is irrevocable. Even though Samson made mistakes, God still used him to fulfill his purpose. When God calls someone, his plans will come to pass despite human failure. 2. Strength without discipline leads to destruction. Samson had incredible power, but without self-control, it led to his downfall. Strength must be accompanied by wisdom and obedience to God. 3. Sin blinds, binds, and destroys. Just as Samson was blinded and bound by the Philistines, sin does the same to those who fall into its trap. It may seem enticing, but it ultimately leads to destruction. 4. True strength comes from God. Samson's physical strength was nothing without the Spirit of the Lord. Likewise, our greatest strength is not in ourselves, but in God's power working through us. 5. God's grace is greater than our failures. Samson failed many times, but in the end, God still used him to accomplish his will. No matter how far we fall, God's grace is always available for redemption.